Hello there, friends and fellow story lovers. I'm so glad you've stopped by today. There's something special about gathering around to share a tale that speaks to the heart, isn't there? Especially on days like this, when we could all use a reminder of what truly matters. I want to share something with you that's been close to my heart lately. A story called Thunder's Whisper. Imagine Montana Territory, 1885. A proud rancher named William Thompson faces the first real failure of his 40-year career. The magnificent black stallion in his corral, aptly named Thunder, has rejected every expert approach. William's reputation as the finest horse trainer in the territory hangs in the balance. Then, something impossible happens. An 8-year-old boy slips through the fence rails. Before anyone can stop him, he's standing in the corral with the dangerous horse. But instead of charging, Thunder lowers his massive head to the child's outstretched hand. The boy is Jake. And as William is about to discover, Jake is his grandson, a child he never knew existed from the son he'd turned away years ago. What unfolds is not your typical Western tale of conquest and gunfights. This is a story about how sometimes the wildest things, horses, hearts, family rifts, aren't meant to be broken, but understood. It's about 3 generations of men finding their way back to each other through one remarkable horse, carrying the memory of someone they all loved and lost. I'd love to take this journey with you through the rolling hills of Montana, where pride meets forgiveness, tradition meets innovation, and an untamable spirit becomes the very thing that brings a family together. If you've ever struggled with family relationships, or felt the special connection that can form between humans and animals, or simply enjoy stories where healing comes from unexpected places, I think Thunder's Whisper might resonate with you. When you finished reading, I'd be truly interested to know which character you connected with most. Was it William with his stubborn pride, Robert with his artistic vision, young Jake with his natural gifts, or perhaps Thunder himself? Your thoughts and reflections always add something special to these stories we share together. Shall we begin? William Thompson's weathered hands moved with practiced precision as he adjusted the bridle on the nervous mare. 40 years of working with horses had taught him the language of subtle movements, a flick of the ears, the tension in a jawline, the shift of weight from one hoof to another. The morning sun bathed the Montana ranch in golden light, casting long shadows from the weathered barn across the dew-dampened yard. "Easy now, girl," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that rarely wasted words on humans but flowed freely when speaking to horses. The mare relaxed under his touch, her previous owner's claims of unmanageability seeming foolish now. William allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. At 58, he might move a bit slower than in his prime, but his reputation as the finest horse trainer in the territory remained unblemished. From the ranch house porch, his foreman Jackson called out, "Mail's here, Mr. Thompson. That letter you've been waiting for from the Jenkins estate." William nodded, giving the mare a final pat before striding toward the house. His right shoulder ached slightly, an old injury from a stallion 20 years back, but he kept his posture straight, pride never allowing him to show weakness. The letter confirmed what he'd been anticipating. The Jenkins prized stallion, Thunder, would arrive tomorrow, a horse so wild that 3 previous trainers had declared him untamable. The last had suffered a broken collarbone for his efforts. William folded the letter, tucking it into his vest pocket. "Have the reinforced corral ready by noon," he instructed Jackson. "And tell the boys we'll need extra hands tomorrow." No horse was truly untamable, not for William Thompson. Just needed the right hand and proper respect. Thunder lived up to his name. The massive black stallion thundered around the corral, powerful muscles rippling beneath his gleaming coat, hooves striking the earth with such force that dust rose in small clouds with each impact. His eyes burned with a fierce intelligence that William had rarely seen in even the finest horses. Dr. Collins, the territory's most respected veterinarian, leaned against the fence beside William. "I warned the Jenkins family," he said, shaking his head. "That animal's not just wild. There's something different about him, almost like he's choosing to be untamable." William snorted softly. "Horses don't choose, Doc. They respond to fear or respect. This one just hasn't met someone who deserves his respect yet." Around them, ranch hands and a few neighbors had gathered to watch the legendary William Thompson take on the impossible horse. William removed his worn leather vest, handing it to Jackson, then entered the corral with slow, deliberate movements. He carried no whip, no bridle, just a length of rope and decades of experience. Thunder stopped his circling, dark eyes fixed on William with unnerving focus. The stallion's nostrils flared, taking in the scent of this new human who dared enter his domain. "Take your time, Mr. Thompson," someone called from the fence. "No rush." But an hour later, William had made no progress. Every approach was met with calculated resistance. Thunder seemed to anticipate each move, responding not with panic, but with what almost seemed like strategy. When the stallion's hoof lashed out, missing William's chest by inches, Dr. Collins called out in alarm, "That's enough for today, William." He nearly had you." Sweat darkened William's shirt as he reluctantly retreated, his eyes never leaving Thunder's. For the first time in decades, he'd met a horse he couldn't read, couldn't reach. "2 weeks," Dr. Collins said quietly as William exited the corral. "That's all the Jenkins estate will give before they'll want my recommendation. And right now, my recommendation would be to put him down. He's too dangerous." William's jaw tightened. 2 weeks to do what no one else could. Late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the ranch yard when the wagon appeared on the dusty road. William, still smarting from his failure with Thunder, watched from the porch as an older woman and a young boy approached. Visitors were rare at the isolated Thompson ranch, especially unannounced ones. "Mr. Thompson?" The woman's voice carried authority despite her age. "I'm Margaret Donovan. My grandson Jake and I are passing through to my sister's in Helena." William nodded curtly, offering the bare minimum of Montana hospitality. "Water for your horses at the trough. Can offer coffee if you need it." The boy, 8 or 9 years old, with startling blue eyes that seemed oddly familiar, wasn't listening. His attention had fixed on the distant corral where Thunder stood apart from the other horses. "Jake, stay close," Margaret called, but the boy had already slipped away, drawn to the fence like a magnet to iron. "Ma'am, call him back," William said sharply, alarm rising as he saw where the boy was headed. "That stallion nearly took my head off this morning." Margaret turned, her face paling as she saw Jake approaching Thunder's corral. "Jake, come back here right now." William was already moving, his long strides eating the distance, but not quickly enough. The boy had slipped between the rails, standing in the corral with the dangerous stallion. What happened next stopped William in his tracks. Thunder, who had charged at every human who entered his space, approached the boy slowly, head lowered. Jake stood perfectly still, one small hand extended. The massive black stallion sniffed the boy's palm, then astonishingly allowed Jake to touch his muzzle. "That's not possible," William whispered. "Mr. Thompson," Margaret's voice was quiet beside him. "There's something you should know about Jake. He's your grandson." "My grandson?" The words hung in the air between William and Margaret as they stood by the corral. Inside, Jake continued to commune with Thunder, his small hand now gently stroking the massive stallion's neck. The horse that had nearly trampled William hours earlier stood docile as a lamb. Margaret nodded, her eyes never leaving Jake. "Your son Robert is his father. He married my daughter Amanda 5 years ago." A dull roar filled William's ears. Robert, the son he hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. The boy who had rejected the ranch, rejected his heritage to pursue painting of all things. The argument that had severed their relationship replayed in William's mind with painful clarity. "Robert never told me he had a son," William said, his voice rougher than intended. "He wouldn't have," Margaret replied. "Amanda passed away last year. Pneumonia. Robert's been raising Jake alone while trying to build his art career in Denver." She hesitated. "I'm taking Jake to stay with my sister for a while. Robert needs time to find his footing." William watched the boy, seeing now what his pride had missed at first glance: the Thompson jawline, the same blue eyes that had looked back at William from the mirror his entire life, the same eyes Robert had. "How does the boy know horses?" William asked, unable to reconcile Jake's extraordinary connection with Thunder. "Amanda loved horses, had one special stallion she raised from a colt." Margaret's gaze shifted meaningfully to Thunder. When the Jenkins estate acquired him after Amanda's passing, he became difficult." Understanding dawned on William like ice water. Thunder was Amanda's horse. "Yes, and the only connection Jake has left to his mother." Margaret's eyes held William's. "Jake doesn't know you're his grandfather, and I haven't decided if he should." The next morning dawned clear and cool, with Margaret and Jake returning to the ranch as agreed. William watched from the porch as Jake immediately headed for Thunder's corral, the boy's eagerness palpable. "He barely slept," Margaret commented, accepting the coffee William offered. "Talked about Thunder all night." William nodded, uncomfortable with small talk, and even more uncomfortable with the knowledge that his own flesh and blood had been a stranger to him. "The boy has a gift with horses." "Like his grandfather," Margaret observed, "and his father." Before William could respond, the sound of an approaching horse drew their attention. The rider's straight back and precise movements were unmistakable even at a distance. William's chest tightened. "Robert," Margaret sighed. "I sent word to him yesterday. Thought he should know Jake was meeting his grandfather." Robert Thompson dismounted with fluid grace, his artist's hands contrasting with the confidence of someone raised on horseback. At 34, he looked more like William than either would care to admit, the same tall frame and broad shoulders, though Robert's face showed a gentleness his father's had lost years ago. "Father," Robert acknowledged, his voice neutral as he approached the porch. "Son." William's response was equally measured. The weight of unspoken words hung between them until Margaret broke the silence. "Jake's with Thunder. The horse lets him touch him, won't let anyone else near." Robert's eyes widened slightly. "Thunder? Amanda's horse?" He turned toward the corral, where Jake stood with the black stallion. "The Jenkins estate sold him?" "After Amanda died," Margaret confirmed, "he became unmanageable." "Except with Jake," William added, a note of wonder creeping into his gruff voice. Robert studied his father for a long moment. Some creatures only respond to kindness, not control. The words carried the weight of their shared past. "I should go to my son." The afternoon sun beat down as William, Robert, and Dr. Collins stood watching Jake with Thunder. The boy sat cross-legged in the corral, the massive stallion grazing peacefully nearby, a scene impossible to imagine just yesterday. "I've never seen anything like it," Dr. Collins admitted, shaking his head in wonder. "That horse tried to kill 3 grown men, but with the boy—" "It's because Thunder was my mom's," Jake said, having overheard as he approached the fence. "He misses her. I can tell." William and Robert exchanged glances, the shared moment of connection immediately replaced by remembered tension. "Be that as it may," Dr. Collins continued, "the Jenkins estate needs a decision. They can't sell him as is, and they won't keep paying board for a dangerous animal." He turned to William. "2 weeks, like I said. Then I have to make my recommendation." "You can't destroy him," Jake protested, small fingers clutching the fence rails. "He's not bad." Robert placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "No one's saying that, Jake." William cleared his throat. "The boy could come each day, work with the horse." "Out of the question," Robert responded immediately. "We're only passing through. We'll be moving on to—" "Dad, please!" Jake's eyes brimmed with tears. "Thunder needs me." Margaret approached from the house, her expression thoughtful. "We could stay at my cousin's place in town, just for the 2 weeks. Give Jake a chance to help Thunder." Robert's jaw tightened, eyes meeting his father's in silent challenge. "This isn't about the horse, is it?" "This is about keeping Jake here." "This is about saving a valuable animal," William countered, though they both knew it wasn't the complete truth. "2 weeks," Robert finally conceded, his voice tight. "But I'll be here every day with Jake, every minute." William nodded once. "Fine." He looked at his grandson, seeing both his son and himself in the boy's determined expression. 2 weeks to save Thunder. Morning light filtered through the barn windows as Margaret spread old photographs across a hay bale. William, Robert, and Jake gathered around, examining images of a younger Amanda standing proudly beside a black colt, unmistakably Thunder in his youth. "She raised him from 6 months old," Margaret explained, handling the photographs with care. "Her father, my husband, brought him home after a neighbor's mare died foaling. Amanda bottle-fed him herself." Jake traced his mother's smiling face with a small finger. "Mom called him her shadow with hooves, said he followed her everywhere." William studied the progression of images, Thunder growing from gangly colt to powerful young stallion, Amanda's face maturing alongside him. In every photograph, the bond between them was evident, the horse's attentive ears, Amanda's confident hand on his neck. "After Amanda died," Margaret continued softly, "Thunder changed. Wouldn't let anyone near him. The Jenkins family bought him from Robert when—" She trailed off, glancing at her son-in-law. "When I couldn't afford to keep him," Robert finished, his voice tight. "Art doesn't pay consistently, especially with medical bills. I thought selling him to a good family was the right decision." "Thunder didn't think so," Jake said, with a child's simple clarity. "He's been waiting for Mom to come back." William cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the raw emotion filling the barn. "Explains why he responds to the boy." "Jake must remind him of Amanda." Robert nodded slowly. "They have the same way about them, gentle but never weak." For a moment, the shared understanding of Thunder's grief united them, 3 generations connected by loss, and the animal who embodied it. "I can help him," Jake said with quiet certainty. "He just needs to know it's okay to trust someone else." William met his son's eyes over the boy's head, a silent acknowledgment passing between them. Perhaps Thunder wasn't the only one who needed that lesson. The contrast between William's methods and Jake's couldn't have been more striking. From the fence, Robert watched his father enter Thunder's corral carrying a rope and bridle, tools of control. The stallion immediately tensed, ears pinned back, eyes tracking William's every move. "Easy now," William said, his voice commanding respect earned through decades of experience. "We're just getting acquainted proper," Thunder responded with a warning snort, hooves pawing the earth. William advanced methodically, attempting to establish dominance through unwavering confidence, a technique that had tamed countless horses before. After 30 fruitless minutes, William exited the corral, frustration evident in the tight set of his jaw. "Your turn," he told Jake gruffly. Jake slipped between the rails empty-handed, not even a rope to establish connection or control. Instead of approaching directly, he simply sat in the middle of the corral, legs crossed, apparently content to wait. "What's he doing?" William muttered to Robert. "Watching, listening," Robert replied. Amanda did the same thing. For nearly 10 minutes, nothing happened. Thunder maintained his distance, occasionally lowering his head to nibble at sparse corral grass. Then, almost imperceptibly, the stallion began moving closer to Jake, one careful step at a time. When Thunder finally stood over the boy, Jake didn't reach up or make demands. He simply began talking softly, words that didn't carry to the men watching but seemed to resonate with the horse. Thunder's ears flicked forward, listening. Only then did Jake slowly rise and place a hand on Thunder's neck. The stallion remained calm, accepting the touch that had triggered aggression with William. "He's not trying to tame him," Robert observed. "He's asking permission to be friends." William's weathered face revealed conflicting emotions, professional pride warring with wonder at his grandson's gift. "Never seen anything like it," he admitted quietly. "Boy has a way about him." "Yes," Robert agreed. Just like his mother. Late afternoon found William and Robert alone on the porch, watching as Jake led Thunder around the corral on a loose lead rope, a milestone achieved after just 3 days of work. "He's a remarkable boy," William said, breaking a lengthy silence. Robert nodded, pride evident in his expression. He sees the world differently, feels things most people miss. "Gets that from you, I suppose." William's tone carried a hint of the old argument. Art versus ranching, sensitivity versus strength. "You always were more interested in watching than doing." Robert's jaw tightened. "Is that what you think painting is? Just watching?" "I think it's not putting food on the table or building something that lasts," William replied, the words flowing from a well-worn groove of disappointment. 8 generations of Thompsons worked this land, built something real. And I chose to build something different. Robert stood, hands clenched at his sides. "Something you never bothered to understand." William rose to his full height, the old anger rising. "I understood plenty. My only son, throwing away his birthright for what, father? For beauty? For truth? For seeing the world as it could be instead of just what can be bought and sold." Robert's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. "That's what you never understood. The ranch was your dream, not mine." "And what about Jake?" William demanded. "What dream are you giving him, dragging him from place to place, while you chase galleries and commissions?" The accusation landed like a physical blow. Robert's face flushed with anger and hurt. "Don't you dare question how I raise my son. You lost that right when you told me not to come back without a real profession." From the corral, Jake called out excitedly, unaware of the tension crackling between his father and grandfather. "Dad! Grandpa! Look what Thunder can do!" Both men turned, their argument momentarily forgotten as Jake demonstrated Thunder's progress, but the damage had been done. the next morning, brought an unexpected visitor to the ranch. Emily Parker, Jake's teacher from his brief enrollment at the town school, arrived in a modest buggy, a stack of books beside her. "I brought Jake's lessons," she explained to Margaret as they watched Jake work with Thunder. "I heard he'd be staying a while." William and Robert stood awkwardly distant from each other, the previous day's argument creating an invisible barrier between them. Emily, observant by nature and profession, noticed the tension immediately. "Jake has an extraordinary gift with animals," she commented, attempting to bridge the divide. "In my 7 years of teaching, I've never seen a child with such intuition." William nodded stiffly. "Thompson blood. We've always understood horses." Robert's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Emily continued. "Actually, Mr. Thompson, I've seen similar qualities in Robert's paintings. The horse studies he donated to our school show remarkable understanding of equine behavior and emotion." Surprise flickered across William's face. "You paint horses?" he asked his son. "Among other subjects," Robert replied cautiously. "I've been working on a series about the relationship between the West and its animals, not just conquering nature, but partnering with it." Emily smiled. "The museum in Denver has expressed interest in exhibiting the collection. That's quite an achievement." William absorbed this information silently, his expression unreadable. When Jake called Emily over to meet Thunder, Robert and William were left alone again. "You never mentioned your paintings were successful," William said finally. "You never asked," Robert replied simply. Before William could respond, Jake's excited voice carried across the yard. "Look! Thunder remembers what I taught him yesterday." Both men turned to watch as Jake demonstrated a simple trick with Thunder, the horse gently bowing his head on command. "Different methods," Emily observed, returning to stand between them. "Same remarkable result. Perhaps there's more than one way to communicate with animals, and with each other." Dark clouds gathered on the horizon as evening approached, promising the season's first major storm. Inside the barn, William secured loose equipment while Robert helped Jake finish Thunder's evening feeding. "Storm's coming," William commented, glancing through the open door at the darkening sky. "Looks to be a big one." Jake looked up anxiously. "Will Thunder be okay?" "He'll be fine in the barn," William assured him, though his expression remained concerned. "Those clouds have the look of a real gully washer. Lightning, too." "Thunder doesn't like storms," Jake said, placing a small hand on the stallion's neck. "Mom told me he got his name because he was born during a thunderstorm, and he's been afraid of them ever since." Robert and William exchanged glances, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. "We should head back to town before it hits," Robert said, checking his pocket watch. "Margaret will be worried." William nodded toward the ominous clouds. "Might be safer to stay here tonight. That storm's moving fast, and the creek crossing could flood." Thunder shifted nervously in his stall, ears twitching at the distant rumble that carried his name. Jake stroked his nose soothingly. "We'll stay," Robert decided, watching his son with the horse. Jake wouldn't sleep anyway, worrying about Thunder. As if in response, lightning flashed across the distant mountains, followed seconds later by a deep roll of thunder. The stallion's muscles tensed visibly, his eyes widening. "He remembers," Jake whispered, pressing his forehead against Thunder's. "Don't worry, boy. I'll stay with you." None of them realized just how prophetic those words would become. The storm broke with sudden fury shortly after midnight. Rain lashed against the ranch house windows, where Robert and Jake slept in the spare room, while William dozed fitfully in his chair by the fire, unwilling to retire to his bedroom with guests in the house. A particularly violent lightning strike illuminated the yard like midday, followed instantly by a thunderclap that shook the house to its foundation. William jerked awake just as Jake burst from the spare room in his nightshirt. "Thunder!" the boy cried. "He'll be scared." Robert appeared behind his son, pulling on his boots. "It's just a storm, Jake. He's safe in the barn." Another flash boom sequence rattled the windows. This time, they heard it. A high, terrified whinny from the barn, followed by the unmistakable sound of splintering wood. "He's breaking out!" William was already moving, grabbing his coat and hat. Robert and Jake rushed to follow. The 3 generations of Thompson men battled through howling wind and stinging rain to reach the barn. William wrenched the door open against the gale to reveal empty stalls and a shattered rear wall where Thunder had kicked his way to freedom. "He's gone!" Jake's voice broke with panic. William assessed the situation with the rapid calculation of a lifetime on the frontier. Creek's rising. If he heads east, he'll be trapped by the water. West leads to rocky terrain. His eyes met Robert's, another moment of unspoken understanding. "We need to find him before he hurts himself." "In this?" Robert gestured at the raging storm. "He's Amanda's horse," William said simply. Robert nodded, decision made. "I'll take the creek path. You know the western terrain better." "I'm coming too," Jake insisted. "No, son." Robert knelt before the boy. "You stay with Grandpa. I'll go alone." "We go together," William corrected firmly. "All of us." Thunder trusts the boy. Rain pounded relentlessly as William led Robert and Jake along Thunder's likely path west of the ranch. Lightning provided brief, blinding glimpses of the rugged landscape, while William's storm lantern struggled against the darkness between flashes. "Hold tight to your father's hand," William shouted to Jake over the wind's howl. "Footing's treacherous here." Robert gripped his son's small hand while scanning the rocky terrain for signs of the escaped stallion. Despite years away from the ranch, his childhood instincts returned, reading broken branches, displaced stones, the occasional hoofprint preserved in mud before the rain washed it away. "There!" Jake pointed during a lightning flash, his eyes somehow finding what the adults had missed, a dark shape moving among the boulders ahead. William nodded approvingly at his grandson. "Good eye, boy. Thompson eyes." They pressed forward, the storm growing more violent around them. The creek to their right had become a raging torrent, its banks overflowing onto the path. "Path narrows ahead," William called back. "Canyon walls on both sides. If Thunder's gone that way, he'll be trapped." Robert pulled Jake closer as they navigated the narrowing trail. "If we can get ahead of him, we can block the path, keep him from going deeper into the canyon." William paused, considering. "Creek crossing half a mile up. We could cut him off." He hesitated, looking at Jake's small form. "It's risky with the boy." "I can do it," Jake insisted, rain streaming down his determined face. "Thunder needs me." Father and grandfather exchanged looks, not of conflict this time, but of shared concern and grudging respect. "Like his mother," Robert said with a sad smile. "And his father," William acknowledged. "Stubborn as both of you." The brief moment of connection was interrupted by another flash, revealing Thunder, now clearly visible ahead, dangerously close to the flooding creek's edge. "He's heading for the crossing," William realized with alarm, "and it'll be under water by now." They reached the creek crossing just as Thunder did. What was normally a shallow ford had transformed into a churning maelstrom, carrying branches and debris in its muddy current. The stallion paced anxiously at the water's edge, trapped between the flood and the canyon walls. "He'll try to cross," William warned, his experienced eyes reading the horse's desperate movements. "He's panicking." As if confirming his words, Thunder reared and moved toward the dangerous water. "No!" Jake broke from his father's grip, running toward the horse. "Jake!" Robert lunged after his son, but slipped on the muddy ground. William reacted with surprising speed for his age, moving not to stop Jake, but to position himself between the boy and the creek's raging edge. "Easy, Jake," he called. "Slow movements now." Jake slowed his approach, calling to Thunder in the gentle voice that had first formed their connection. The stallion's ears flicked toward the familiar sound, momentarily distracted from his panic. Robert joined them, carefully placing himself on Thunder's other side. For the first time, father and son worked in perfect coordination, William using his experience to block the creek path, Robert mirroring his movements to prevent escape back into the canyon, Jake providing the calm center that drew Thunder's attention. "That's it, boy," Jake soothed, gradually moving closer. "Remember me. It's okay." Through the driving rain, Thunder finally focused on Jake, recognition breaking through fear. The stallion trembled, but held his ground as the boy reached him, placing a small hand on his soaked neck. "Good boy," Jake whispered. "We're here now." William produced a length of rope from his coat, fashioning a makeshift halter, which Thunder, remarkably, allowed him to slip over his head. As they slowly led the horse back toward safety, Robert found himself walking beside his father, both of them flanking Jake and Thunder. "We make a good team," Robert said quietly, the admission costing him less than he'd expected. William nodded, his usual stoicism softened by exhaustion and something that might have been pride. "The boy has your mother's gift with living things, and your way of seeing what others miss. And your stubbornness," Robert added with a slight smile. "Thompson trait," William agreed. "Serves us well when properly directed." In that moment, drenched and exhausted but successful, 3 generations of Thompson men found unexpected common ground. 3 days after the storm, the Thompson Ranch received an unexpected visitor. Harlan Weaver, owner of the largest ranch in the county, arrived in a polished buggy that stood out starkly against the still muddy yard. William met him on the porch, his expression guarded. Weaver was known for expanding his holdings by acquiring struggling neighboring properties, and the Thompson Ranch had seen better days. "William," Weaver greeted, removing his hat, "heard about your success with the Jenkins horse. Impressive work." "Not my success," William corrected, nodding toward the corral where Jake was walking Thunder on a lead rope. "My grandson's." Weaver watched the boy and horse with calculating eyes. "Remarkable. That's why I'm here, actually." He reached into his coat, producing an envelope. "I'd like to make an offer for the stallion." William frowned. "Thunder's not mine to sell. Belongs to the Jenkins estate." "Already spoke with them," Weaver replied smoothly. "They've agreed to sell him to me if you can get him manageable by the deadline. I'm willing to pay $500, half to them, half to you for the training." William's eyebrows rose despite himself. $500 was a substantial sum, enough to repair the ranch's weather-damaged barn roof and still have plenty left over. "I'm establishing a breeding program," Weaver continued. "That stallion has excellent bloodlines, and now that he can be handled—" He gestured toward Jake. "Well, I'd hire the boy to come work with Thunder at my place occasionally. Generous wages, of course." From across the yard, Robert approached, having noticed the visitor. His expression grew wary as he recognized Weaver. "Think about it, William," Weaver said, handing over the envelope. "That's a certified bank draft. Jenkins' family has already signed their portion over. All it needs is your signature acknowledging successful training." He smiled thinly. "Unless you think the boy can't deliver by the deadline." Evening found William alone in his study, the bank draft on the desk before him. Through the window, he could see Robert and Jake in the barn, tending to Thunder before returning to town for the night. $250, enough to keep the ranch going through another hard year, enough to prove to Robert that ranching could provide stability that art never could. William picked up a framed photograph, his late wife Caroline with infant Robert in her arms. "What would you tell me to do?" he murmured. Caroline had always been his moral compass, softening his hard edges. She would have handled things differently with Robert, might have prevented the rift that kept their son away for nearly a decade. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Emily Parker stood on the porch, books in hand. "I brought some more lessons for Jake," she explained. "Margaret mentioned you were all still here working with Thunder." William invited her in, grateful for the distraction from his decision. "You've made remarkable progress with the horse," Emily commented, glancing through the window at the barn. "Jake's doing, not mine," William admitted. "Boy has a gift." Emily smiled. "He does. Robert says Jake gets it from his mother, but I've seen the same quality in Robert's paintings, that ability to truly see beyond the surface." William's gaze returned to the bank draft. "Robert told you about his art?" "He's quite talented," Emily replied. "His series on working horses captures something special, the partnership between human and animal. Not dominance, but mutual respect." The word struck William unexpectedly. Wasn't that exactly what Jake had demonstrated with Thunder? Not breaking the horse's spirit, but earning its trust. "I've been offered money for Thunder," William said suddenly. "Good money." Emily studied him thoughtfully. "And what does Jake think about that?" The simple question landed like a physical weight on William's conscience. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Jake enthusiastically described his plans for Thunder between bites of breakfast. "And when he's fully trained, maybe we could teach other people how to make friends with horses instead of breaking them," the boy continued, eyes bright with excitement. "Dad says—" "Jake," William interrupted gently, "Mr. Weaver has offered to buy Thunder." The boy's fork clattered against his plate. "Buy him? But—" "It's a generous offer," William continued, watching his grandson's face carefully. "Thunder would go to a good home, a big ranch with other fine horses." "But Thunder's special," Jake protested, tears welling in his eyes. "He was Mom's. He needs someone who understands him." Robert, who had been quietly eating, set down his coffee cup. "What are you doing, Father?" William ignored the question, keeping his focus on Jake. "What would you do with Thunder if he could stay, son?" Jake wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "I'd teach him more things. Show people that horses don't have to be scared to be good. Dad and I could visit him whenever we're in Montana." He looked up hopefully. "Maybe we could stay in Montana. With Thunder. And you." The simple honesty of the child's words struck William to his core. He reached into his pocket and withdrew Weaver's bank draft, setting it on the table. $250, he explained to Robert, for successfully training Thunder. Robert's eyes widened at the amount. That would fix the barn roof, with plenty left over. William nodded, then did something that surprised them both. He tore the bank draft in half. "Thunder's not for sale," he said firmly. "He belongs with Jake." "But the money," Robert began. "Some things matter more than money," William replied, meeting his son's gaze. "Took me too long to learn that." He turned to Jake, whose face had brightened with hope. "Now tell me more about these ideas of yours for teaching people about horses." The following morning found William, Robert, and Jake seated at the kitchen table, papers spread before them. Robert sketched rapidly as he explained his vision, his artist's hands bringing concepts to life with quick, confident strokes. "A riding school," he said, adding details to the drawing of the Thompson barn, modified with additional stalls and a covered training area. Not just for learning to ride, but for understanding horses. Thunder would be the centerpiece, living proof that partnership works better than dominance. William studied the drawings with a critical eye honed by decades of practical ranch management. To Robert's surprise, his father didn't immediately dismiss the idea, but instead pointed to the sketch of the training area. "You'd need more support beams here," William noted, tapping the paper. "Montana snow load would collapse this design by January." Robert blinked, then quickly adjusted the drawing. "Good point." Jake leaned forward eagerly. "Could we teach kids my age?" "That's the idea," Robert confirmed. "Emily, Miss Parker, mentioned that many families around here can't afford traditional riding lessons, but understanding horses is valuable knowledge in ranch country." William rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Land's been in the Thompson family for 8 generations. Always assumed it would stay a working cattle ranch." He met Robert's eyes directly. "Never considered it might serve the community in a different way." "It could still be a working ranch," Robert suggested, "just with an additional purpose." For a moment, William saw his son not as the boy who had rejected the family legacy, but as a man with his own vision, one that honored their heritage while transforming it into something new. "Thunder Riding School," William said, testing the name, "has a certain ring to it." Jake grinned widely. "Thunder would like that, being important instead of just scary." "Like a lot of things," William murmured. "Sometimes what seems frightening just needs to be understood." By afternoon, the ranch house had become planning headquarters. Emily arrived with educational materials, while Margaret contributed her business experience from years of running a successful shop. "We'd need proper record keeping," Margaret explained, creating orderly columns in a ledger. "Expenses, income projections, student registrations." Emily arranged books on horse care beside Robert's sketches. "I can develop a curriculum that combines practical skills with reading and arithmetic. Children learn better when education has real-world application." William watched this flurry of activity with mixed emotions. For decades, he'd run the ranch alone, making every decision without consultation. Now, his kitchen was filled with people contributing ideas he'd never have considered. "What do you think, Father?" Robert asked, noticing William's silence. "You know this land and these buildings better than anyone." The simple acknowledgement of his expertise, something William had always felt Robert rejected, caught him off guard. He moved to the table, studying the emerging plans. "South pasture would work better for beginning riders," he offered. "Flatter terrain, sheltered from the wind." He pointed to an area on Robert's sketch. "Could build a proper paddock here." "Perfect," Robert agreed, quickly modifying the drawing. Jake tugged at William's sleeve. "What about Thunder? Will he have a special place?" William considered the question seriously. "Main barn has that center stall with the extra window. Previous owner built it for his prize stallion. Proper place for a horse of Thunder's quality." "I could paint a sign for his stall," Robert suggested. "Something special to mark his importance to the school." For the first time, William saw what his son's artistic talent could contribute. Not just pretty pictures, but a vision that communicated what words alone could not. "You always did have an eye for seeing things differently," William admitted quietly. "Suppose that's valuable in its own right." Robert met his father's gaze, years of tension softening slightly. Different doesn't have to mean wrong. As dusk approached, the initial excitement gave way to practical challenges. William, Robert and Dr. Collins walked the property, assessing what would be needed to transform the working ranch into a riding school. Liability concerns are significant, Dr. Collins cautioned. Working with children and horses carries risks. William nodded. Ranch life always has risks. Question is how to manage them properly. Robert made notes as they walked. We'd need proper insurance, written agreements with parents, safety protocols. They paused at the barn, where Jake was showing Emily how Thunder now allowed gentle brushing, something unthinkable just a week ago. Then there's the financial question, William said bluntly. Turning down Weaver's money was one thing. Finding funds to actually build this school is another. Robert's expression grew serious. I've been selling paintings consistently in Denver. Not a fortune, but enough to contribute. He hesitated. And I have an exhibition next month, if it goes well. Might not be enough, William countered. Ranch hasn't turned a profit in 2 years. Drought, then that hard winter. They fell silent, the practical obstacles threatening to overwhelm the morning's vision. What about a demonstration? Emily suggested, joining them with Jake. Invite the community to see what Jake has accomplished with Thunder. Show them the potential of this approach to horsemanship. Dr. Collins stroked his mustache thoughtfully. Jenkins' family would need to agree, but they'd likely support anything that increases Thunder's value and reputation. We could invite everyone, Jake said excitedly. Show them how Thunder isn't scary anymore. A public demonstration, William considered. Been a while since the Thompson Ranch hosted the community. Robert looked at his father. It would mean opening the ranch to outsiders, letting people see what we're trying to build here. William gazed across his land, seeing it through new eyes, not just as his private domain, but as something that could serve a greater purpose. Sunday after next, he decided, we'll show them what Thunder and Jake can do. Sunday dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for the demonstration. By mid-morning, wagons and riders began arriving at the Thompson Ranch, families from town, neighboring ranchers, curious onlookers drawn by word of the untamable horse and the boy who had reached him. William stood on the porch, watching the unprecedented influx of visitors onto his private domain. For generations, the Thompsons had kept to themselves, protecting their land and their privacy with equal vigilance. Now, he was deliberately inviting the community to witness a new beginning. Among the arrivals, William spotted Harlan Weaver's polished buggy. The wealthy rancher nodded curtly as he passed, clearly curious, despite his disappointment at losing Thunder. Inside the house, Jake peered nervously out the window at the growing crowd. What if Thunder gets scared with all those people watching? Robert adjusted his son's collar, his own nervousness hidden behind a reassuring smile. Thunder trusts you, Jake. Just focus on him, like you've been practicing. Emily and Margaret joined them, carrying refreshments for the guests. Quite a turnout, Margaret observed. Word has spread about Jake's gift with the impossible horse. William entered from the porch, his weathered face uncharacteristically apprehensive. Jenkins' family just arrived, Dr. Collins with them. He looked directly at Jake. Time to show them what you've accomplished, son. Jake took a deep breath and nodded, his young shoulders straightening with responsibility. The Thompson men, grandfather, father, and grandson, stepped out together to face the waiting community. 3 generations united by one remarkable horse and the bridge he had built between them. A temporary paddock had been constructed near the barn, with rough benches arranged for spectators. The crowd murmured with anticipation as William stepped forward to address them. "Folks," he began, his voice carrying across the yard, "appreciate you coming today. Most of you know the story of Thunder." He gestured toward the barn, where the black stallion remained out of sight. The horse deemed untamable by 3 experienced trainers. Dr. Collins nodded confirmation from where he stood with the Jenkins family. "What you're about to see isn't a miracle," William continued. "It's the result of understanding, patience, and a different approach to horsemanship." His eyes found Robert in the crowd. "Sometimes the old ways aren't always the best ways. Sometimes it takes new eyes to see a better path." Robert stepped forward, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. "My son Jake will demonstrate what he's accomplished with Thunder in just 2 weeks. Not through force or dominance, but through trust and partnership." A skeptical murmur ran through the crowd. Harlan Weaver folded his arms, clearly expecting disappointment. Jake entered the paddock alone, looking small and vulnerable in the open space. He took a deep breath, then called softly, "Thunder, you can come out now." From the barn emerged the magnificent black stallion, moving freely without lead rope or halter. The crowd gasped collectively as Thunder trotted directly to Jake, lowering his massive head to the boy's level in greeting. For the next 15 minutes, Jake demonstrated their progress, Thunder following commands, performing simple tricks, allowing touch in previously sensitive areas, all without restraint or force. The horse moved in perfect harmony with the boy, their connection palpable even to the most skeptical observers. William watched with undisguised pride as his grandson accomplished what he, with all his experience, could not. And for the first time, he truly understood what Robert had tried to tell him years ago, that there were many ways to leave a legacy. As the demonstration concluded, applause erupted from the amazed spectators. Dr. Collins approached with the Jenkins family, their expressions a mixture of astonishment and approval. "I've never seen anything like it," Dr. Collins admitted. "The transformation is remarkable." Mr. Jenkins nodded in agreement. "We purchased Thunder for his bloodlines, hoping to include him in our breeding program, but after the incidents—" He shook his head. "We'd given up hope." "What happens to Thunder now?" Jake asked anxiously, his arm still draped over the stallion's neck. William cleared his throat. "Actually, we have a proposal." He gestured for Robert to continue. Robert stepped forward, sketches in hand. "The Thompson Ranch is establishing a riding school, one that will teach not just riding skills, but a new approach to horsemanship based on what Jake has demonstrated today." He displayed the drawings of the proposed facilities. Thunder would be the heart of this program. Murmurs of interest spread through the crowd. Several parents moved closer to examine the plans. "We're proposing to purchase Thunder from you," William addressed the Jenkins family. "For a fair price, of course. He'd remain here, where Jake can continue working with him." Mr. Jenkins exchanged looks with his wife. "After what we've seen today, I believe Thunder belongs with the boy. As for payment," he smiled, "we'd like to enroll our grandchildren as the school's first students. Consider that arrangement our investment in this venture." Emily stepped forward, curriculum plans in hand. "We'll combine riding instruction with practical education. Many children in our community need both." "The Thunder Riding School," William announced, the name no longer strange on his lips, but filled with promise. A new chapter for the Thompson Ranch. 5 years later, William Thompson stood on his porch, watching students practicing in the paddock that had once been an empty pasture. The Thunder Riding School had flourished beyond anyone's expectations, with children from across the territory coming to learn the gentle approach to horsemanship that Jake had pioneered. Robert and Emily, now married, supervised the day's lessons. They had made the ranch their permanent home, building a small house near the main residence. Robert's paintings of horses had gained recognition, and prints hung in homes throughout the territory, including now William's study. In the special paddock near the barn, an aging Thunder grazed peacefully, while Jake, now 13, worked with a nervous young colt, using the same patience and understanding he had shown the black stallion years ago. "He's got a gift for teaching, that boy," Margaret observed, joining William on the porch. "Just like his parents." William nodded, watching his grandson with quiet pride. Thompson's stubbornness put to good use. "And Thompson's vision," Margaret added pointedly. William smiled, acknowledging the gentle correction. "The Thunder Foundation," he mused, referring to the charity they had established to provide free lessons to children who couldn't afford them. "Not the legacy I imagined, but maybe a better one." Margaret patted his weathered hand. "The best legacies are the ones we build together. Well, friend, we've traveled quite a journey together across the Montana Territory of 1885, from William Thompson's weathered ranch to the flourishing Thunder Riding School that grew from one remarkable connection between a boy and a horse. If your heart feels a little fuller for having witnessed 3 generations of Thompson men find their way back to each other, know that mine does too. Some stories leave their hoofprints on your soul, and Thunder's tale has certainly left its mark on mine. There's something about horses that strips away our pretenses, isn't there? William Thompson spent decades believing that mastery came through control, that tradition must be preserved exactly as it was handed down. His estrangement from Robert wasn't just about a son choosing art over ranching. It was about the fear that change meant losing something essential. Yet it took Thunder, untamable, proud, loyal Thunder, to show that sometimes what seems like wildness is just a different kind of wisdom waiting to be understood. What moved me most while crafting this family's story was how healing often comes from unexpected sources. William couldn't reach Thunder with all his expertise, but Jake, a child with no formal training, knew instinctively that connection requires vulnerability, not domination. Sometimes our greatest teachers are those we least expect, and our most profound lessons come when we're willing to set aside what we think we know. The frontier has changed since William's day, but don't we all still struggle with those same essential challenges? The parent who can't understand a child's different path, the professional whose trusted methods suddenly fail, the stubborn pride that keeps us isolated when we most need connection. William's journey from resistance to acceptance reminds us that growth isn't abandoning our foundations, but building something new upon them, just as the Thompson Ranch became something greater without losing its heritage. In the end, Thunder's Whisper isn't just about taming a horse or healing a family. It's about the courage to listen when life speaks to us in whispers rather than shouts. It's about recognizing that legacy isn't what we preserve unchanged, but what we allow to evolve through the generations that follow us. Thank you for riding this trail with me. Stories only truly live in the hearts of those who receive them, and your willingness to follow 3 generations of Thompsons as they found their way back to each other has made this tale more than just words on a page. Thunder's story has me reflecting on the bridges we build or burn in our own lives, those moments when we choose between clinging to old ways or embracing new understanding. We all face our untamable challenges, and we all have our Thunder moments where connection proves more powerful than control. What's something you once thought couldn't be changed that was transformed through a new perspective or approach? Share your story in the comments, because wisdom doesn't just belong to fiction, it lives in the experiences we share with each other. If this tale of family reconciliation and finding common ground across generations resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button and consider subscribing. The West was built on stories of people finding their way forward together despite their differences, and I'd be honored to share more of these journeys with you. Until next time, may your family bonds strengthen with each passing season, and may you find wisdom in the whispers all around you.